The Norse Vanir god of waters, seafaring, wealth, fertility, and fishing, Njörður was the patron of sailors and fishermen. As patriarch of the Vanir deities, Njörður led his tribe against the Aesir gods during the Aesir-Vanir war. He would later join the Aesir as part of a peace settlement. Unlike most deities, the mythological father of Freyr and Freyja was fated to survive the cataclysmic destruction of Ragnarök and be reborn into the world. Some scholars state that Njörður lived above the sea in a realm known as Noatun, meaning the place of boats. Described at least once as being located in the heavens, Noatun offered Njörður an ideal place from which to manage the elements and manipulate them. Njörður was a popular god among the Norse and seafarers in particular. Those who worshipped him did so in hopes of receiving bounty from the seas. In Norway, the center of Njörður's worship, locals continued to offer him prayer well into the 18th century. Njörður has been the subject of scholarly discourse and theory, often connecting him with the figure of the much earlier attested Germanic goddess Nertus, the hero Hedingus, and theorizing on his formerly more prominent place in Norse paganism due to the appearance of his name in numerous place names. Before we continue, think of liking and subscribing if you want more content like this. Also, check out the video on the lessons that Wodarr teaches us from east to west.
When it comes to etymology, the name Njörður corresponds to that of the older Germanic fertility goddess Nertus, and both derive from the Proto-Germanic Nerrus. The original meaning of the name is contested, but it may be related to the Irish word nert, which means force and power. It has been suggested that the change of sex from the female Nerthus to the male Njörður is due to the fact that feminine nouns with U stems disappeared early in Germanic language, while the masculine nouns with U stems prevailed. However, other scholars hold the change to be based not on grammatical gender, but on the evolution of religious beliefs, that Nerus and Njörður appeared as different genders because they are to be considered separate beings. When it comes to mythology, in the prose Edda, Njörður is introduced in chapter 23 of the book Gylfaginning. In this chapter, Njörður is described by the enthroned figure of Hai as living in the heavens at Noatun, but also as ruling over the movement of the winds, having the ability to calm both sea and fire, and that he is to be invoked in seafaring and fishing. Hai continues that Njörður possesses wealth and prosperity, and that he can also grant wealth in land and valuables to those who request his aid. Njörður originates from Vanaheimar and is devoid of Aesir stock, and he is described as having been traded with Honir in hostage exchange with between the Aesir and Vanir. Njörður is represented in art as a very handsome god in the prime of life, clad in a short green tunic with a crown of shells and seaweed upon his head, or a brown-brimmed hat adorned with eagle or heron plumes. As personification of the summer, he was invoked to still the raging storms which desolated the coasts during the winter months. He was also implored to hasten the vernal warmth and thereby extinguish the winter fires.
Njörður's most famous story is about his tumultuous marriage to Jötun Skade. The Skálskaparmál, a section of Snorri Sturluson's prose Edda, filled in the details of their meeting and marriage. Skade's father was killed by Odin, Thor, Loki, and the other Aesir. Skade was enraged by the event and went to Ausgardur for revenge. She changed her mind when the gods offered her reconciliation and atonement. They promised Skade a husband of her choosing, but there was a trick. She could only choose her husband by the look of his feet. Blindfolded so that she could see only the feet of the gods standing in a circle around her, Skade looked about her and her gaze fell upon a pair of beautifully formed feet. She felt sure they must belong to Baldur, the god of light, whose bright face had charmed her, and she designated their owner as her choice. Their marriage started on the wrong foot, and they fiercely argued about where to live. Skade preferred cold weather and deemed the mountainous highlands the most suitable. On the other side of the argument was Njordur's Noatun, with its calm sea air. Eventually, a compromise has been made, and the gods agreed to live for 9 days and nights in Thrymheimar and 3 days and nights at Noatun. After committing to the plan, both gods complained at their spouses' living proposals. Njordur wanted to leave the hills behind and said, "Loth were the hills to me. I was not long in them, nights only 9. To me the wailing of wolves seemed ill after the song of swans."
Skade despised the sea and said that, "Sleep could I never on the sea beds, for the wailing of waterfall, he awakens me, who comes from the deep, the sea mew every morn." For some time, Njordur and Skade, who are the personifications of summer and winter, alternated thus, the wife spending the 3 short summer months by the sea, and he reluctantly remaining with her in Thrymheimar during the 9 long winter months. This couldn't last, and each god went to their own side. Skade left to live for the mountains and wolves of Thrymheimar, where she hunted and hiked for the rest of her life, while Njordur remained in Noatun watching the seas and guiding those who traveled them. In Jungian psychology, this represents the battle of opposites in our own psyche. While Njordur was separated from Skade, he impregnated his sister. The couple produced their children, Freyr and Freyja, from this union. Though this custom was forbidden among the Aesir, Njordur appears in or is mentioned in 3 kings sagas collected in Heimskringla. In chapter 4, Odin appoints Njordur and Freyr as priests of sacrificial offerings, and they became gods among the Aesir. In chapter 9, Odin dies and Njordur takes over as ruler of the Swedes, and he continues the sacrifices. The Swedes recognize him as their king and pay him tribute. Njordur's rule is marked with peace and many great crops, so much so that the Swedes believe that Njordur held power over the crops and over the prosperity of mankind. During his rule, most of the Aesir die, their bodies are burned, and sacrifices are made by men to them. Njordur has himself marked for Odin, and he dies in his bed. Njordur's body is burned by the Swedes, and they weep heavily at his tomb. After Njordur's reign, his son Freyr replaces him, and he is greatly loved and blessed by good seasons like his father.
Worshipping of Njordur survived into 18th or 19th century Norwegian folk practice, as recorded in a tale collected by Haldar Oppedal from an informant in Odda, Hordaland, Norway. The informant comments on a family tradition in which the god is thanked for a bountiful catch of fish. The old folk were always rather lucky when they went fishing. One night, old Gunhild Reinsnos and Johannes Reinsnos were fishing in the Sjosavat. They had taken a torch and were fishing with live bait. The fish bit well, and it wasn't long before Gunhild had a week's supply of fish for her pot. So she wound her line around her rod with the words, "Thank be to him, to Njordur for this time." Njordur is regularly invoked in oaths along with Freyr and the Atlmautki Aus, the almighty god Odin. Sacrifices should be made to him at the same time as Odin and Freyr to ensure a peaceful and fruitful year. Njordur has left substantial traces in Scandinavian place names, for example that of Narvik, Norway, which can be assumed to derive from an earlier form, Njardaurvik, meaning Njordur's Bay. Njordur was supposed to bless the vessels passing in and out of port, and his temples were situated by the seashore. Their oaths in his name were commonly sworn, and his health was drunk at every banquet, where he was invariably named with his son Frey. This is it for today's video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, and feel free to comment your opinions about Njordr. Thanks for rebuilding Olympus.